Okay, so in the morning we were looking at these two methods of calming the mind and becoming clear about the nature of the contents of the mind by focusing attention. And now we move to opening ourselves to awareness. Awareness and attention are not the same. Attention means I am focusing on something. So it's an organization of how I engage with the world. Awareness is the open clarity of the mind which is present whether we are attentive or not, whether we are clear about what's going on or not. The awareness is primordial. It's there from the beginning. It's not a construct, it's innate. Because of that, it can't be lost. But we can forget about it when we become preoccupied, when we become caught up in something else. So, the practices we did this morning involve some degree of conscious intention. We have to decide, I'm going to focus on my breath, or I'm going to scan through my body again and again. And we can become aware when that we have shifted away from our intention and become distracted in something else. That is to say, it's a kind of practice that you can know precisely what you're going to do before you start. These are the instructions, follow the instructions, and if you get lost, come back to the instruction. That arises on the basis of an intention. Awareness is not operating in the domain of intention. It is the natural clarity of the mind, and it's revealed when we allow it to reveal itself. So we have a paradox here that the very activity of the mind obscures the nature of the mind. And the activity of the mind is particularly obscuring when it's caught up in being about something. So our seriousness and the seriousness of the objects to which we intend mean that we invest certain features with the environment with particular importance, and other features of the environment are less important. When we do that, we're very, very busy at maintaining these structures. But awareness itself is not doing anything. So in the traditional example, it's like a mirror. Without any effort, the mirror reveals what is put in front of it. It's in the very nature of the mirror to have this exhibiting clarity, this capacity to show. The mirror is not making any choices about what it shows, it's just showing what is there. In a similar way, whatever arises as our experience because of our capacity to display experience. So even when you feel terrible, even when you feel stupid, even when you feel your life is hopeless, this is the radiance of awareness. Now, it doesn't feel like the radiance of awareness because you think, surely my real nature should be bright and shiny. All these Buddhas look bright and shiny. We don't get images of dull, stupid-looking Buddhas. But that's because you wouldn't be able to sell them. The Dalai Lama recently said that in his next life, if he's reincarnated at all, he might do it as a woman. The interviewer asked him, what kind of woman? He said, a beautiful woman. And then the interviewer, a feminist, was a little bit upset about this. Why should it have to be a beautiful woman? Well, that's obvious. Because that sells. Dalai Lama is a high-status commodity. Many things are sold on the back of the Dalai Lama. All kinds of T-shirts and flags and so on. He is a very marketable commodity. So people make these statues and they want to sell them. People make paintings and they want to sell them. So they make them beautiful. We like beautiful things. Why? Because it makes us happy. If we look at things which are very ugly or challenging, it makes us unhappy. We say being happy is better than being unhappy. Therefore we choose beautiful Buddhas. But the Buddha isn't made happy by beautiful things, and he isn't made sad by ugly things. So the Buddha that we look at in the statue doesn't look at all like the Buddha. But it's the marketable Buddha. That's the real thing. The Buddha mind is without prejudice. As we'll see when we start to go deeper into the meditation, because the mind is unborn and has no beginning and end, it has nothing outside of itself. Yes?
So all these books, modern books, Buddhist books, they have happiness in the title. So
Yeah.
this is just for the market.
It's for marketing.
Okay.
Well, it's also because we believe that we're quite good at making ourselves unhappy. We're not so good at making ourselves happy. So it's niche marketing. They're looking for a deficit in the market, because anybody can give themselves a bad time. I think I'm quite good at it. So, yeah, why should we be happy? Well, the Buddha's first teaching is all compounded things have the nature of sorrow or suffering, and that there is a way out of this. So we want to be free of suffering. Now, that proposition is very attractive because we think here on the left-hand side we have suffering, and on the right-hand side, ladies and gentlemen, we have happiness. We are going to move from sorrow to happiness. Nowadays we're very concerned about immigration. But we are all immigrants. We hope to move from samsara to nirvana. And we're willing to pay smugglers to get us there. That's why we're here. I'm going to get you over the border. And this is the way our mind is operating. That's the sort of construct that we tend to have. But actually, the mind itself is open to what occurs without bias and without prejudice. Now, you can only do that if you have a kind of indifference. That is to say, it doesn't touch me. Now, that could be a kind of schizoid state, a state in which you're somewhat cut off from the impact of what's going on around you because you've been hurt in some way. You could be disassociating, cutting yourself off. It doesn't mean that. It means that from the moment that we woke up this morning, we were having experiences, many different kinds of experiences, and they are all gone. They are all gone. We can't get them back, but we are still here. We are still here in the moment of having this experience. So on a very simple, direct level, if you just think about today, all that you had, you now don't have. What we have this moment is already vanishing. What will come, we don't know. The content of the mind is changing and shifting. And yet, we are still here. What does it mean to be still here? Well, each of us is here to find that out. We are here in terms of a narrative we tell ourselves about being here, but we are also just here. And that just here-ness is the basis for being able to have all the experiences that we have. The just here-ness of awareness is empty of its own content. That is to say, it's not anything at all in itself. And because of that, it offers hospitality to everything. It's able to entertain happy situations and unhappy situations. And it doesn't get destroyed by them. Just as the mirror shows beautiful objects and very ugly objects, terrifying objects. And the mirror doesn't break if some child is murdered in front of it. It just shows a child being murdered. That is to say, its position is neutral equanimity. That what is arising is just a reflection. But we say, it's terrible. A child is being murdered. Something must be done. We phone the police. At this moment, millions of chickens are being murdered. We're not phoning the police and saying, go to the abattoir and arrest these murderous demons. You think, oh, chicken's quite nice. So that's a selective attention. We worry about children being murdered because we are humans. We don't worry so much about chickens. Even if people are vegetarian, chickens are chickens. What's more important, a chicken or a person? 10 chickens for one child? 100 chickens for one child? Weird. Very, very strange. We are giving value, ascribing value according to our cultural situation. What kind of a child is it? Is it one of our children or is it one of their children? If it's one of their children, maybe one chicken's enough. If it's one of our children, then maybe 1 million chickens wouldn't be enough. This is the play of the mind. What we have to recognize is it's fine to have these cultural assumptions. We might see them as basic ethical assumptions. They are mental constructs. They arise for a while due to causes and circumstances, and then they vanish. We see what's happening in the Middle East, and we think these people are barbarians. We remember European history in the last 100 years, and we think, oh, we are barbarians. Barbarianism is everywhere, because it's a tendency in the human situation. We are creatures with a lot of anger and rage and selfishness. So terrible things are done. It doesn't make human beings intrinsically bad, it makes them situationally vulnerable. And therefore, having better situations is likely to promote people to be more ethical. All of this means this great tumbling history of the world, all the many, many diverse cultural patterns that there are in different societies are patterns. Patterns of experience arising due to causes and circumstances, patterns which show themselves and then start to vanish. There used to be many, many tribal populations in the world, and they vanish year by year as Christian missionaries and business people go into the jungles in Papua New Guinea, into South America, wanting to plant soya beans and so on. Whole traditions of life that have been there for 2,000, 3,000 years are being wiped away. Languages are vanishing day by day in this world. Species are vanishing. This is showing us again and again what we take to be our world is very, very fragile. It's a concatenation, a balancing of various vectors, of patterns of cause and effect which move together. It's just images, patterns. Who is the one who sees this? This is awareness. Awareness can see the world as it is. For the ego, it's very difficult, because the ego immediately gets in with some kind of emotional response. That's terrible. That shouldn't be happening. But we know that when we try to react from our emotionality and say, that shouldn't happen, we often don't create very good circumstances. Because the fact that bad things happen doesn't mean that good people know what to do to stop the bad things happening. There are many outrageous activities happening in the world, but they can't be stopped. There is still one guy left in Guantanamo Bay. He has a British passport, and the British government can't get him out of Guantanamo Bay because America wants to keep Guantanamo Bay open because of their huge agenda. And that one poor little man is held in there as a way of keeping the place occupied. It's like if you buy a flat and there's some old granny in a room in it. You can't get rid of granny. So it's quite difficult to sell a flat with granny living in it. You've got to wait till granny dies. So they've got to wait till this poor guy dies. Because he symbolizes something for someone else. And this is what we see all over the world, that this is a very complex, interrelated network of events. And you scratch your head and think, how would you solve that? We move in this direction and it bangs something else. People think, let's invade Iraq and get rid of this bad guy Saddam Hussein. all these thousands and thousands of people die. People are disrupted, which then leads into all kinds of new confusions. Poor tribal groups being annihilated, people who've lived there for 3,000 years, on the basis of people having an idea that they thought was good. But of course it wasn't a pure good. It was deeply massaged with the oil of rage and anger and the desire to punish and the desire to prove. It's very difficult for the ego to formulate a pure intention because we don't know what we're doing. We are at the mercy of many other forces, which is why, from the point of view of the Buddhist paths of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the focus is on opening to the ground awareness, which is prior to all experience and the basis of all experience. Because once you get into trying to move around the inner content of your mind or the outer content of the world, you find that each aspect is linked to many, many other aspects. And you're caught up in this endless interweaving of cause and effect. And it doesn't actually produce clarity. It produces great sadness. And that's because of a basic misconstrual of the problem. If we sort out all the content of the mind and all the content of the world, so that there are only good people doing good things in a lovely world, then we will all be happy. That is not going to happen. So if that is one's basic belief, you are actually buying sorrow. In the name of happiness, you're purchasing a big bag of suffering. Because your dream will not come true. And it won't come true not because you're lazy or you have a bad intention, but because of what in Buddhism they call dependent arising or interdependence, pratītya samutpada, means on the basis of this, that arises. But this is also arising on the basis of many other things. So each time we look at a situation and we see it inside a little box, we see it decontextualized, we do our analysis, we might do some computer modeling and think, right, we've really got a handle on what this is. It's become an entity, a knowable formation. Therefore, because it is like this, if we do that, things will be good. But this was never this. This was only this because we ignored everything else. As soon as you allow this to be contextualized, it's not this anymore. It's this in relation to this and this and this and this and this. How could you ever formulate any action if you took that complexity into account? Which is why politicians are elected because they're stupid. Now it may well be that the Republican Party will support Mr. Trump. Now Mr. Trump can blow his own trumpet. He's very good at that. He's clearly a nutter. He's clearly out to lunch. But that's maybe not a bad place for a politician to be. So how do we engage in a world where the most powerful man could be somebody who is manifestly not very balanced? This is the world we live in. That's why the Buddha says, as many other people in India said, this is samsara. This is a place which is generated out of ignorance. That is to say, its ground or basis is a delusion, a misapprehension. And the misapprehension means that everything which arises is being misapprehended, that we take things the wrong way. We imagine that the world is full of truly existing separate entities, and therefore, if only we think clearly and we plan enough, we can get it right. But there are no truly existing entities. We're caught up in a matrix of interaction. So once that primary delusion is in place, everything we do, even if we have a good intention, leads to suffering. The Buddha said very clearly, all beings want to be happy, but all the actions that they engage in lead only to unhappiness. Because we don't understand the basis of happiness. So in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions, happiness really means a kind of contentment of being settled in an awareness which doesn't block the arising of experience, but isn't created out of experience. This is the basis of freedom, to realize that all the forms of identity that you have ever had in your life, from the time you were a baby and other people had all kind of notions of who you were, to being a small infant, to going to school, to having friends, to having people you didn't like, to doing well at some subjects and no other subjects, all of these particular formations were just movements. They were just gestures of interaction that lacked any substantiality whatsoever. We have never gained a point where there is a definable, reliable self-essence. And it is this absence of essence which, if we open to it, is exactly the point of freedom. But it's also this absence of essence which, if we try to deny it, invites us on the never-ending task of inventing and projecting essences into our life. I am like this, I am like that. If you think back in your life, how many times you've defined yourself in a particular way, and then a year later, a month later, perhaps even an hour later, it wasn't true anymore. On a very basic somatic level, we say, I'm really thirsty. And that feels absolutely definitive of yourself. I need a drink. You have a drink and you're no longer thirsty. I need a drink was a statement which felt absolutely true, even infinitely true, but it was absolutely situational. So, I need a drink now because I haven't had a drink for some time is the full sentence. But because we're very lazy at speaking and thinking, we trim our sentences into these very solid statements. I'm really hungry. I need to sleep. When you wake up the next morning, somebody punches you and says, get back to sleep. You said you were tired. Go to sleep. I'm not tired anymore. You lied to me last night. So when we speak I am, we're speaking about me in relation to circumstances. We're not speaking about a definable terrain about which we can make a truly reliable analysis or definition. But when we think we know what we are as a something, we're deceiving ourselves and deceiving other people. And this is the pattern of confusion that goes on, which is why in the tradition it says there is no end to thinking. And moreover, the exit from samsara is not thought. Having good thoughts will not get you out, because samsara is not an ethical problem. Although when you're in the domain of duality, the structure on the basis of karma is ethical, and we'll look at this later. But the basic structure is a confusion about ontology. It's a confusion about the nature of being. It's as if I am this is what I am. But I am is the basis of all the I am this, I am that, I am the other. But this I am is only able to support all the other particular moments of I am tired, I am thirsty, I am in Germany, etc., etc. All of these can be niched inside I am, because I am is empty. I, the first person singular, is emptiness itself. That's why we can be many different things. That's why we are many different things. But the I is a double move in that it's making a claim to the continuity of a personal self-identity while changing the content of that identity all the time. So it's like 20 illegal immigrants who managed to get enough money together to buy one false passport. And one person gets across the border and then he posts it in an envelope back, and then the next guy in the gang takes the same passport and goes through it. Now, each moment that arises when you say, I am this, I am that, this is a false passport. Because there isn't really anybody who is tired. Tiredness is a feeling tone which is arising due to causes and circumstances which, when they change, will no longer be generating tiredness, will no longer be generating thirst, will no longer be generating being alive. I am alive for a while due to not having a serious accident, not getting a mortal illness, and so on. When these factors change, we will be dead. I am alive is a description of till now I haven't met my death. Till now my death is sleeping inside me. Every now and then death wants to wake up and we realize, whoop, careful, don't drive so fast, get a bit more rest. Death goes back to sleep. But sooner or later death will wake up and pop you open. Then you'll be gone. And what will have been your life for? Doing this, doing that. Why did you do that? Because I had to. Because I needed some money, or I had kids, this or that. Big story. For what? We make meaning, and we live our lives in the search for that meaning. That's why we're very busy. So Buddhism would say there is already a meaning intrinsic to your situation. And if you awaken to that meaning, you don't have to be so busy generating the meaning of yourself, which allows you then to be a bit more concerned about the situation of other people. Compassion arises from the wisdom of knowing that there is intrinsic value, there is absolute, infinite value in this quality of awareness. This is the ground and basis of all experience, and each of us has it. This is the infinite good. This is what is called in the tradition Kuntuzangpo or Samantabhadra, the always good. This is the primordial Buddha. This is the nature of our mind. If we're in touch with that, all the other activities of meaning making can be relaxed into the experience of them being what they actually are, which is communication. That when we're connecting with other people, something comes alive between us. We're called forth by the other. And we can allow that to happen because we're not defending a particular self-construct. So, part of the practice, as we were looking this morning, is letting go of our addiction to making meaning. Because the way we make meaning is to engage with our thoughts, to merge with thoughts, to be the thinker, as it were, and create these ever-weaving patterns of thought construction, of conceptual elaboration. They are a play. That's why the texts say again and again, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. So, we have in the Buddhist tradition, and of course in the Hindu tradition as well, we have the idea of epiphany as drama. So in North India, in the winter months, you can see in all the villages the Ram Lila, in which the story of Lord Ram coming into the world, his marriage, difficulties in the marriage, his wife being captured, going to Sri Lanka, defeating Ravana, and so on, are enacted often taking 8, 12 hours to be staged through the night. The divine comes into the world, struts a lot of stuff, and then vanishes. So you go in a Catholic church and you've got the Stations of the Cross. This is what happened. On the Buddha, you have the 12 acts of a Buddha's life. The Buddha manifests from Tushita paradise and shows the 12 activities of a Buddha, and then goes away again. That is to say, it's theatre. It's theatre. It's staged in this wonderful available space called the Dharmadhatu. The Dharmadhatu is the sphere of possibility, the stage in which everything occurs. So all the Buddhas, all the mandalas are staged in the Dharmadhatu, and all our misery and grief, our prisons, our homes for the dying and so on, these are also staged in the Dharmadhatu. Actions, feelings, thoughts, sensations, arising and passing, arising and passing. What does it mean? One radical view is it doesn't mean anything. So, for example, in the famous story when Bodhidharma, who introduced dhyana meditation into China, was invited by the emperor to the palace, and the emperor showed him all the stupas he had built and the books, the Buddhist books he had printed, told him about the monasteries he was supporting and so on. And he said to Bodhidharma, "This is all the work I have done. How much merit have I accumulated?" And Bodhidharma said, "None." Like that. The accumulation of merit is an illusion, especially if your motive is to accumulate merit in order to be a good guy. It's just another construct, constructing and constructing and constructing, and each of these constructs is there for a while and then vanishes. You can see that there are ruined cities. People build cities and then they get bombed or blown up. You see that happening again in the Middle East. People say it's terrible. There's this wonderful old arch, and now the arch has fallen. There was Bamiyan. How could they blow up these Buddhas? It's quite easy. They learned a bit of engineering. They got some dynamite. That's how they blew it up. But how could they? Because they thought they were shit. But they're the Buddha. Some people think the Buddha's shit. Oh, that's not so surprising. There are some people who think whatever you think is most precious, they think it's total shit. Because what you think is precious is your idea. And you invest your life energy in that thing and make it important. And it's important for you. And the extent of that claim to importance doesn't go beyond a circle drawn around your toes. Unless you become president and then you can bomb other people into submission until you lose the election. It's like that. So what is the point of practice? It's to get out of all that nonsense. This is the nonsense of samsara, of trying to turn good things into bad things. But as the Buddha said, friends become enemies, enemies become friends. What looks good today is not so good tomorrow. Is Turkey a friend or not? Turkey is in NATO. There are nuclear weapons in Turkey. The Americans have many of them located in Turkey, turned towards Russia. But is Turkey a friend? Should the nuclear weapons be taken out? How do you know? One old saying is, in politics, there are no friends, only interests. We stand shoulder to shoulder while the hand's out and the money's coming in. And when the money's not coming in, bye-bye. This is it. Who will stand by us? When the Second World War started, America was immediately coming to Europe's aid. No. America was saying, I don't think we want to be involved. I think we'll sit this one out. And then, luckily for Britain, Japan attacked America. We thank the Japanese for their bloody murderous attack on Pearl Harbor. Because if they hadn't done that, quite possibly, Germany would have not turned towards Russia, would have turned towards Britain, and our history would have been very different. You know? But who won the war? America. You can watch their movies and they'll tell it. Everything is stories. Who is writing the history? Stories. This is the most important thing for us to understand. If you go out when you're young and you have a wild weekend and you do lots of the sort of crazy things young people do, and then you meet a friend, you might tell them about it, and then your mother rings you. You might have another conversation. Why would you do that? Because you're not stupid. It's like that. We tell stories according to the situation. That's very wise. This is why we are multiple. We are plural. We are not just one thing. You can be authentic in everything you do. That is to say, it can ring true, but you're hopefully going to be different with different people. So all of this is a way of thinking that the structures of the content of our mind, whether we see that as external experience or internal experience, is revealed through the clarity of our awareness, and our task is to become in touch with that awareness. So in order to do that, we settle a little bit into our body. To help us do that, we first do this 9-round breathing. So you sit in a comfortable way, and you're going to move your arms so make sure you don't hit someone. So, in this practice, women begin with the left arm, men begin with the right arm. And you raise, if you're a woman, you're raising your left arm up and you bring it over. And as you're raising your arm, you're breathing in, your mouth is slightly opening, you're breathing in through your mouth and your nose. And then you bring this middle finger onto this left nostril, and you breathe out through the right nostril as you're bringing the arm down. As you bring your arm down, you're putting pressure on the rib cage and you're squeezing the air out. And then you bring the arm down, and then you bring up the right arm, and then down, and the left. So for women, they're going left, right, left, right, left, right, and men are going the opposite. And then in the final 3 moves, you inhale through both nostrils and slightly with the mouth open, and then you lean forward as far as you can, bringing your head down so that your chest is squeezing down on the diaphragm and emptying the air out, and you do that slowly 3 times in your own rhythm. Is that clear? Super. Okay, we start. then we just relax into a slow out breath and sit with whatever occurs. Generally we do this practice with our eyes open, just resting gently on the space in front of us. We're not staring at the distant wall, we're just letting the gaze rest in space. Relax in the out breath, and without strongly separating outside and inside, allow experience to come and go. Okay. So this practice we tend to do, certainly at the beginning stages, you do it for quite a short period of time, because it's not about making effort. If you think of a mirror, it is both passive receptive in that it receives whatever is placed in front of it, and it's also active, demonstrative. It shows what is in front of it. Our awareness is similar to this. It is passive receptive. That is, we're sitting here, we're just sitting, and we hear different sounds. Maybe there's a car outside, or people move around a bit. Something is happening, and it registers, it shows itself. This showing, it shows itself if we are aware, and that showing is both like a kind of impact or a moment of registration. Something is revealed, as it were, to us, but it's also something is showing and passing through at the same time. Once you start to think about what is going on, that active participation is also something which is being revealed. So it's not that the awareness is switched off by becoming conscious and making up a story about something. It's that the two are happening simultaneously, but if you like, the conceptual elaboration, the formation of our thoughts and responses is quite crude. It's quite solid, it's quite rough. You can get a handle on it, you can do something with it. But the open awareness is not a thing. It's a lot is happening, but it's not something you can do anything with. And therefore it easily loses attention. Now, what we're trying to do in the meditation is to relax attention into its own ground. Attention is, if you like, a subset of the clarity of awareness. So, each of us, if you lift your hand and have a look at it, it's very nice to have a hand. I hope everybody here has at least one. So you look at your hand, and in looking at this particular formation, you lose the room. You're looking at your hand in the room, but the more you look at your hand, everything else recedes into the background. This is a kind of gestalt formation, isn't it? This is becoming figural or foreground, and the rest recedes. It doesn't mean that the room has vanished, but we become mesmerized by our hand. I'm feeling very sleepy. Now, there is a, if you like, it seems like a decontextualization. The context is there. Nothing has actually been changed, but it is as if the room has vanished. So this is what is going on in our minds. When a thought arises, we are taken by the thought, we give ourselves to the thought, our attention and the thought merge, and it's as if there is nothing else. But this is occurring in the room, which is why in this kind of practice we do it with our eyes open, because we're working against the tendency to collapse into the moment of emergence, the moment that's arising. If you sit with your eyes closed, you can feel closer to what's going on, but in a sense that's not the point. Each thing is as it is in the entire experiential field, in its place with other things. When we fixate our attention on one thing, we attribute, even unconsciously, we attribute more significance, more importance, just because we're giving it that attention. It becomes inflated and disconnected from what's around it. It's inflated with the energy of our attention. Nothing has actually changed. It just becomes more important for us. Important for me is my experience. It's not the object. But it appears to us, because it's important for me, it must be a special object. I don't like cabbage, therefore cabbage is horrible. Other people eat cabbage, that's because they're stupid. Everyone knows, especially me, cabbage is horrible. This is the logic of the child, and this is the logic that we live in all the time. I think it's important, therefore it is important, just because it is important. In that way, ignorance is like a midwife. Ignorance cuts the umbilical cord. This object has started to be born in our mind due to the power of our attention. I am giving life, specific, particular life, to this object or this person by attending to them. The flow of my life energy, my attention, is making them shine. I snip the line of that. They're amazing. I met this wonderful person. They're amazing because I think they're amazing. Other people don't think they're amazing, but I think they're amazing. Therefore, they are amazing. They have taken, it is as if they have taken my projection and become that projection. So when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about them plus me. But I'm forgetting my part in it. And this is how the world comes to be full of seemingly truly existing separate entities. Because we're saying, that is good, I want more of it. That is terrible, I want less of it. And so all the time, this charge or valency is being inserted into the different objects in the world. And this is our own mental activity. Because, and it's a very easy way to see why this is false, because other people don't agree with our evaluation. Other people make other choices. In the airport, I was looking to see if they had a magazine that I wanted. And I saw there was one copy of it left. It was the New York Review of Books. And there was someone standing in front of me. And I'm thinking, fuck, are they going to get that? The likelihood that they would want to read what I wanted to read is very small, but I was feeling, I got it. Oh, no, I haven't. I would sit in the airplane reading this. Why didn't they want it? I looked at all the other magazines they had. No interest to me. Practical photography, yachting today. Not for me. The world is full of people who are not me. This is amazing. This is a truly, truly amazing fact. And they're not me because they are constructed in different patterns using similar but slightly different ingredients. And so modern consumerist capitalism functions by allowing us to make ever more particular choices, ever more varied permutations of the same basic ingredients of what's in the shops and so on. And out of this micro choice making, we get a finer and finer sense of the particularity of ourselves, which is a construct. So all of this comes back to the meditation. When we're sitting, we want to allow experience to flow through. Some taste sweet, some not so sweet. Just let it go. The texts say, don't go after good thoughts. Don't wait expectantly for the next thought. Don't sit like a cat outside the mouse hole waiting for the thought to come. And don't go after the past thought as if it was something very precious. Because when you go after a past thought, you are a thought chasing a thought. And this is our double identity. We are both the space within which thoughts arise, and we are, in this moment, the specific thought that arises. In our formation as this specific thought, we are impermanent, unreliable, co-created with other vectors. In being the space within which the thoughts arise, we are indestructible and unchanging. These two are there together. Wisdom never changes. Compassion is always changing. Interactions with others cause us to change. We do not have a secure fixed identity except as emptiness. Emptiness is reliable. Nothing is better than something, because every something is impermanent, but nothing never changes. And this is at the heart of the Buddha's teaching, from the Mahayana, from the Heart Sutra, through all the Tantras to Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and so on. It's the desire to find stable substance, entity, things which are truly existing in themselves, that is false. Therefore, when we get distracted in meditation, basically we're looking for something. We're trying to get more of something or less of something else. We find it fascinating. To what end? One of the things I've done all my life, really, since I was very small, was go to second-hand bookshops. I spent a lot of time looking at books and buying books, and now I have so many books, and I think I'm 67, I'm not going to live forever, I've got too many books. I've got more books than I can read, so I start to give away my books. So when I go past a second-hand bookshop, I still get very twitchy. I think I should go in. Go in to get what? You don't need the books. But I want the books. But you don't need the books. I want the books. Give me what I want. No, you don't need it. It's the internal conversation. These books are fascinating, but I have no time. None of us know when we're going to die, but I'm getting on. We can vanish. You can get a stroke. You can go blind. There's all sorts of things that happen before we die. What will I do with my time? I want to read these books. Why? They're important, they're interesting, they're meaningful. They're just marks on paper. When you read a book, you read yourself. Because if you didn't have a mind that could understand the marks on the paper, there would be no meaning in the book. If someone very kindly gives me a book in German, I look at it, it's very nice. What am I going to do with it? None of the marks on paper make any sense to me. The reason the book in German makes sense to you is because you have German in your mind. It's not in the book, it's in your mind. That's the real thing. So every book that we read is just an opportunity to read ourselves, because we choose particular books, because they are of interest to us. It's like a kind of mirror in which we reflect our own image again and again. But it's these examples, I give them to you to try to see how tempting it is just to get lost in this mirror world of reflection. And reflection after reflection after reflection, there's nothing there. It doesn't mean that you have to go and live in a cave in the hills and have a kind of flattened existence. It's to see the movement of looking for something is gestural. It's an extension, and that kind of extension can give you more flexibility in yourself, but you don't actually get anything. Experience is a kind of movement, and that movement can loosen you up if you keep moving with it, but you don't get anything. So when we feel we need something external, that's usually because we're not observing our own mind. Our own mind is changing all the time. There's a lot of movies already in our head. We don't need to go to the cinema. Changing, changing, changing. So when we sit in meditation, it's just like in the movies. There is color, there is light, there is thought, feeling, sensation, memories, hopes, fears. A great panoply, a great procession moving of different events, and then it's gone. The emptiness is, for the purposes of meditation, more important than the content. The key point here is that like in the Heart Sutra it says, form is emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. It means that you have a lot of appearances in the world, but which seem to have a defining internal essence, but that essence is an illusion. There is a form, a shape, but there's nothing within it. It's not guaranteed by something internal. It arises in the matrix of interaction. So form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So they're kind of equal balancing weight. They mutually interact. But on our fulcrum, it's not balanced. We have a tilt. Our tilt is towards form. Our tilt is towards shapes and appearances and the hope that they will give us something, which is why the meditations are always tilting us in the other direction of emptiness. It's not that emptiness is more important than form. It's about a rejigging or rebalancing so that you sit in the meditation and you just let it go. You let it go. But what about? And that was interesting. And doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. There'll be another. There is no shortage of thought supply. It's not rationing. They're not going to run out. You have a lifetime supply of thoughts, feelings and sensations, guaranteed. And as you get older, you probably get more sensation in the knees anyway. So, why are we so desperate for this particular form? That's the real question. Because the ego uses form to construct itself. I am like this, I am like that, I like this, I like that. Choice is the work of the ego, which is not harmful. But when it's always at work, you don't see that actually making no choice is not harmful. You don't lose out by letting some good things go by, because instead of getting that good thing and hanging on to it, which you could only do for 10 seconds anyway, instead of hanging on to it, it goes and you get space. And with the spaciousness, you get relaxation and the sense of, I don't have to. I don't have to. And so you come off the wheel. You're no longer like a little rat turning it round and round and round, chasing each thing because you're sure it must be important or you feel a necessity. Now there's space, just sitting. Stuff coming, going. Looks like me, looks like not me, coming, going. If I don't have to merge with this form, if I don't feel I'm obliged to identify with it, it's on the shelf. It becomes an ingredient. It becomes a potential. A potential for what? For what I'm going to cook for you. So then the most important thing is, how are you? What do you eat? I look at what I have in my big larder, in my store cupboard, and now I have all these pots of potential thoughts which can be put together for you. So wisdom is decathecting or disidentifying from habitual formation, the structure of this is me, this is how I am, to experiencing I am space, I am openness, I am awareness, which is not something but is exactly here. And all of this is available. All sounds, all shapes, all memories, things we've heard people saying, movies, everything can be used in the service of connectivity. So, out of being nothing, we arise in the form which is most fitting to make contact with that particular person. We're not cooking for them what we like to eat. We're allowing their impact on us to show us how to relate. When we meet here together, different people have different ways of connecting. Some people very easily and happily hug each other. Other people like to shake hands. Other people give a kind of nod. Some people sit apart. Some people want to sit in a huddle. This is fine. There's no better way to do it. We are what we are. So what we need to do is to see how other people are and see what is the invitation, what is the availability of the other, and allow ourselves to come into being in relation to that, which relates to your question earlier. Because the more I have a need to make this, because this is what I make, because this what I show you is how I am, then there's going to be a subtle violence on the other. Because if you're going to connect with me, you have to connect with the me that I am. So I'm reducing my plasticity and my responsiveness in order to assert the continuity of my ego identity. So this is the big choice, and this is a function of the meditation. The meditation is not complicated, but it's difficult to do because it means letting go of the urge of arousal into merging with the thought.
Can you say it again, please?
Sorry?
Say it again, please.
So, the meditation is not very difficult, it's not complicated. It means letting go of the urge which comes from the arousal, the felt need to identify with the thought or to do something with the thought. It's about leaving appearances to be as they are without having a comment on them.
That I understand, but I don't understand then how you get to the connectivity with the other, because the other also is just an empty system or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but it's a pattern.
Yeah.
So if you thought, on Saturday night we'll have some music, and the different kinds of music bring people to dance in different ways. Some people can dance to any kind of music, some people will dance to only 3 tunes in the whole evening. Mm? So the environment calls different people forward in different ways. So the fact that the music is empty, it's just sound and emptiness passing through time, doesn't stop us somehow wanting or finding ourselves moved into that. So how the other person is brings us forward. It's not that we are doing it to them or they're doing it to us, but the kind of connection between us creates a particular ambience or a mini field within which certain things can be said or not said.
And meditation then is the awareness that this is the sort of dance that we are doing at the moment.
Yeah, the meditation allows us to let go of the set moves of dancing. So in your family, when you grow up, your parents show you how to waltz. And they say, you are a good girl, and the reason we know you are a good girl is because you waltz very nicely. And so for the rest of your life, you should only waltz. Don't do that cha-cha-cha. No salsa for you. It would be very bad. Huh? Then you see other people doing salsa. Will you be betraying yourself if you do salsa? No, I only do waltzing. I am a waltzer. So it's like that. When we see that this range of moves that we learn arose due to causes and circumstances, it has the facticity, the givenness of our particular shape or habit. It insists, and it has a particular impact on the environment around us, and yet it's not arising from some solid essence or definition. It's just a habit formation. This is how I tend to move. So when we sit in the meditation and these habit formations arise, by not indulging them, by not affirming them, their emptiness or their potentiality is revealed, that they are things we could do, but we don't have to do. But if I feel that I am this person, I am the one who always does this, I have to do it, because by doing it, it makes me me. And that's how the ego locks on to pattern formation. So when we shift out of this ego's desire to secure its own territory and enduring shape, the shapes that we have learned to adopt in the whole course of our life become just potentials. They become ingredients, possibilities. And they're no longer having to be mobilized in the service of ourselves, because we've got more sense that we are just this openness. And so they mobilize towards what we're encountering in the environment. So in that we're in the service of the whole field, rather than trying to make particular selections from the field to reassure us about the validity of who we've decided that we are, or been told in our childhood who we are. So it's quite it's a loosening up, so that these pieces can be used. A bit like if a child's got a Lego set and he puts the Lego into making a big ship. Now it's got the ship, but he can't do anything else. If he wants to build a car, he's got to destroy the ship. But I don't want to destroy my ship. Actually, the ship's just made of pieces. The ship is a pattern. Your mind says the pattern of the Lego pieces is a ship. So if we take them out, we can make them a car, and then we can decide it's not a car, it's just a pile of Lego, and another ship can come back. It's the pieces, it's the potential, not the current formation. But as long as you lock on to, but I want it to be like this, then all the other possibilities are asleep. They become latent. I think we should take a break now, and then we can come back and do some more practice. Okay. So another way that we often use for entering this practice is through Guru Yoga. And yoga here means to relax into the state of the Guru. And Guru means that which is full of sustenance. The root of Guru is the same as the root for cow, Gai or Gao. In the Tibetan gloss on Guru, it says if you eat a lot of beef, you feel very heavy. So the Guru is like eating a lot of beef. Of course, not in the Hindu system where they don't like you to eat beef. So Guru is the presence of the enlightened nature. Now, in the Tantric system, they work with the transformation of duality into non-duality. So you start with the idea, I am an inferior person, I don't have many qualities, but luckily I met somebody who has a lot of qualities. In fact, they are so wonderful. So you're using almost self-denigration, putting yourself down, and idealization of the other to create a kind of maximum separation. So that with great humility you pray to the Holy Guru to give their blessing. And this is linked with the recitation of mantras, visualization, and so on. So that by receiving the form of the blessing, which you can take as lights coming from their body and so on, gradually your faults and limitations are washed out, and your nature and their nature become similar, so that eventually the Guru comes to the crown of your head, dissolves into you, you dissolve into them, and this ball of light dissolves into emptiness. This is the standard structure in tantric practice. So the duality of the higher and the lower becomes a means of transforming the lower into the same state as the higher, and then the duality is dissolved into one point and one point into emptiness, and then the whole world arises as the mandala of the Guru or the Buddha mind. In the Dzogchen tradition, Guru Yoga operates in a different way, because it's not concerned with transformation, it's concerned with opening to how things actually are. So it's not seeing our Buddha nature as a potential, but seeing the Buddha nature as the ground of our being, the basic awareness which is operating all the time. And so in this system, in the space in front of us, a couple of arms' length, we imagine a letter R, which symbolizes emptiness. And it's around it a rainbow-colored light, or in the Tibetan system, white, red, blue, yellow, and green light, which represent the 5 Buddha wisdoms. And this light radiates out and surrounds the white letter R. That is to say, wisdom arises from emptiness. Wisdom doesn't arise from the accumulation of experience, from knowledge, from human knowledge, but it is itself the natural radiance of emptiness. And we open ourselves to that state by reciting the sound of R 3 times. As we say R, we just release and relax the tensions in the body, the fixations in our mind. Everything dissolves into emptiness, because from the very beginning it has been emptiness. It's only our own ignorance which tells us that these empty formations actually have some inherent substance. We relax and release, and then we're just sitting, and this R in front of us dissolves in space, and then we're sitting there. So we're working with the space which is in the heart of the Guru, and the space which is in our own heart, as being from the very beginning absolutely the same. It's not that some people have more Buddha nature than others. It's not even that some people are more ripe than others. In the general Mahayana teachings and in the lower tantras, they talk a lot about ripeness and a lot about the stages of the path. But actually there is no path, because the most important thing has been there from the very beginning. And therefore we have to relate to what is there. What is it that stands between us now and this open nature? Nothing at all. But as we know, nothing is twinned with something. So all the contents of our minds, our thoughts, memories, sensations, these stand in the way, but they are also nothing. So hopefully from this you can see the logic of the meditation. We're not going after thoughts. We're not trying to get rid of thoughts. We're allowing the thoughts to come and go. The thoughts are the movement of the mind in emptiness. Thoughts are not the obstacle. They're not an obscuration. They're not standing between me and my nature, as if I'm on a pilgrimage to some holy city. That idea of a spiritual journey is the discourse of duality, that there is a better place somewhere else. From the point of view of Dzogchen, that's not true. Because since from the very beginning everything has been empty, it is empty as it is. It doesn't need to be changed or improved to show its emptiness, because emptiness is everything. From the point of view of the ego, invested with notions of liking and disliking, some things are better than others. But as we were looking earlier, they're only better than others because I like them. They're not intrinsically better than others. Because some people will find the things that we don't like very attractive. Why? Because they construe the world in a different way. There is no intrinsic truth or value in arisings. Doctors take a vow, a commitment to do their best to help their patients to stay healthy, and a part of that is to help them to stay alive. Now, as we know, there are huge ethical discussions about keeping patients who are in certain states alive. If you don't keep them alive, you are letting them die. But you're letting them die because you're no longer keeping them alive. So once you have a machine that will keep someone alive, if you switch off that machine, you are de facto killing them. But doctors don't like to be considered to be people who kill other people. That wouldn't be very attractive. So at a certain point, you stop the life support machine. That kills the person. But we can't say that, because that's not nice. We just stop the life support machine. It's like that. This is good, this is bad. We feel certain things are bad. We think they are intrinsically bad. Now there are many people who go from Britain to Switzerland, to clinics where they can be allowed to die. They get some lethal injection or get something to drink, as a result of which they die, because they say, with my condition, I no longer want to stay alive. Is this a good decision or a bad decision? Who can say from outside? Ethics is highly problematic. We would like there to be general ethical principles that could guide our behavior under all circumstances. But of course, if somebody is in great pain and nothing can be done, and they feel that their life is completely diminished and that they are no longer who they are, and they're just on the final point, and they say, I don't want to be lying in a bed for years, not knowing what's happening, and having someone else wiping my arse. I don't want that. This is not how I have lived. I am at the point of dying as myself, but my body may continue, and I don't want that. Good, bad, right, wrong. People have opinions about that. Nobody exactly knows what to do, and how could they? Because it depends which of the factors in that situation you take account of. You might believe medicine will develop so that some kind of intervention could be made later. You might feel that it's in English they say, the slippery slope, the beginning of a very bad direction to start allowing euthanasia because of all kind of corrupt practices that could arise. There's no end to thinking. So this is the basic point. In the realm of thoughts and constructions, you can't really work out what's right and wrong. Rule books are simplifications, and all simplifications are guidelines which never quite fit the individual situation, because in the situation somebody has to decide what to do, and it's up to them, and that's a lonely business. So what is the best support for when we make these decisions? From the Dzogchen point of view, it's to be in touch with the spacious nature of existence. Otherwise, we get back to investing the situation in terms of our own belief system. And our belief system seems true because we believe it. This is solipsistic. This is a self-sealing, self-referential argument. I know that it's true because I'm sure that it's true. It makes real sense to me, so this is what I have to do. All that means is you believe it's a good thing to do, so you want to do it. Who's going to validate that? Only somebody who shares your beliefs. I like chocolate ice cream best. Do you like chocolate ice cream? Good. We know the real thing, don't we? We don't want strawberry ice cream. That's not very good. It doesn't get much further than that. So, in the meditation practice, when we're reciting this we're releasing our inhabitation of this domain of permanent excitation. Truly, there is no end to thinking. There's no end to books, to discussions, to ideas. But there is an end to it when you relax into spaciousness, because spaciousness is never touched by thoughts and feelings. The mirror shows reflections, and it shows them in the most intimate way. It shows the reflection as if it was inside the mirror. In the same way, our mind shows all kinds of thoughts, feelings, memories, as if it was inside our mind. And then they're gone. So, the mind itself, although it is full of thoughts, feelings, and so on, is not actually contaminated by the thoughts and feelings. They don't leave a trace. They're just passing through. The ego is always being stained and infected and contorted and rearranged by experiences, but the mind itself isn't. So when we say this we're not just making a noise, we're truly opening to letting go. And then it's gone. And then there's just space, and then something's happening. So now there's sound coming in through the windows. Coming and going, coming and going. Many things coming and going in the space of the mind. We don't need to take up a position, like or dislike, good or bad. It's just allowing it to be there. Okay, so we try this now. So again, we're doing this with our eyes open. Chin is slightly raised. We're looking into the space in front of us. Just imagining a white letter R. Some people find it easy to visualize or imagine these things. Other people don't. If it's not easy for you, just have the general idea that this open, perfect form is in front of you, and you release yourself into identification or integration with it. In this practice, many things appear our main task is to allow them to disappear. In the Dzogchen tradition, it's called the self-liberation or rangdrol of all phenomena, that they go free by themselves. And there's a Buddhist saying, when the mind moves, the 10,000 things arise. So when we are sitting here, first we relax. Gradually, if we become infected by thoughts, or we bind ourselves into thoughts, we start having thoughts about what is going on, judgments about how we're doing, and so on. And then you're out of the meditation. You're just sitting thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Because it's very weird. You're just sitting here, not doing anything, nothing to do, and there's a lot of stuff. And that's exactly the point. What made the stuff? It's the movement of your own mind that makes the stuff that alienates you from your own nature. So we say, I'm not having any experience. This is just ordinary. What is this? That's a thought. If you allow the thought to arise, I don't know what I'm doing, that thought will go. But when the thought arises, you think, I don't know what I'm doing. Then you start thinking about what is going on. And the more you think, this thinking awakens all the entities which have been allowed to dissolve back into nothingness. They appear, and now you have many, many issues that you can work on, think about, and so on. So, that is to say, the birth of the object, which is simultaneous with the birth of the subject, is the movement of the mind. These are cognitive interpretations. These are mental interpretations. This is the work of the mind. I say, I'm bored, I don't know what I'm doing, or this is good, or it was better when I did it before. Some kind of evaluation comes, and it tastes delicious. It feels like a doorway. It seems to be meaningful. You go into it. What have you gone into? I don't know what I'm doing. It's gone. I don't know what I'm doing. About 3 seconds. It's gone. But if you go into it, it seems to give you some ground to stand on. Who is standing on that ground? I am. Why am I here? What am I trying to get? And then you can have more and more thoughts, all resting on the echo of the previous thought. From the point of view of Dzogchen, you don't need to block thoughts like that. It's just to observe, they've already gone. They've already gone. So the meditation instruction was, don't go after past thoughts. The thought's gone. Let it go. Oh, but it was telling me something important. I need that thought. So I need that thought. Now you have a dualistic structure. You've got the subject, the object, and the verb linking them together. I need that thought because I need to do something with that thought. That thought's meaningful to me. And you can observe how this operates in your own mind. You're sitting. The stream of thoughts and feelings is potential, but the potential wakens up when you believe that it truly exists. You give the meaning. So in the book of John, in the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. So what does that mean? And we also have in Genesis, God creates everything in heaven and earth. We sit here, and the mind gives rise to everything. Why am I here? What is this? What is this? As soon as the word is established, and the word seems to be the fundamental validation, on the basis of the territory set out by the word, you are in the semiotic web. You are in the network of signs and signifiers. And there is no end to the movement of that. But I'm bored, or whatever thought arises in the mind is gone. It was there, it showed something, an opinion, a possibility, and then it vanishes. If you sit on it, it will take you. It becomes like a vehicle, which is what we notice in distraction. We go this way, then we go that way, then we go the other way. But if you sit relaxed and open, it will just pass through. These thoughts and feelings pass through the mind. And actually, they don't leave any trace, but we go after them. And it's our going after which causes the trace to be there. Because we are imagining there is something more to get from it. So, when we're sitting, again and again, if we find ourselves caught up in something, just stay on that point, not moving into it, not moving away from it, but just staying open to whatever the formation. This is stupid, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm glad I'm here, when do we have dinner? Whatever kind of thought arises, staying with it will let you see that it will vanish. And the one who stays with it is still there. But if you merge into the thought takes you somewhere, and then it leaves you. And then you're relocating yourself endlessly. So the key work is non-activity. Sometimes this kind of meditation is called the meditation of non-meditation. Because there are many kinds of meditations where there is something to do. You might have to do mudras, recite mantras, make tormas, do prostrations, visualize things, follow the breath. There are many, many active forms in which I am doing something useful, and after having done something useful for a while, I feel stronger and better. This kind of practice will not make you feel stronger and better, because it's designed to allow the formulation, this is better, this is worse, to go free. What you get is nothing. The Buddha says the nature of the mind is nothing. Awareness is nothing. This is the understanding of all the Buddhas. Nothing. But we want something. And when you get something, you really get nothing, because you get nihilistic nothing, because every something you've ever had has vanished. When you were 6 years of age, maybe you got some very nice shoes. If you want to put these shoes on your feet now, then you have to be like the ugly sisters in Cinderella. You have to cut your toes off. They won't fit you anymore. They're out of date. The time has gone. Everything is vanishing. This is not a punishment. This is not a punishment. If you have children, day by day they're getting bigger. They are now no longer who they were. This is life. Life is this unfolding, changing. You cannot stop the river. You cannot stabilize the flow of thoughts, yeah?
But even if I realize that, well, who is the one who notices that I am maybe manage not to get on with the thought, just stay, somebody is watching that it is dissolving. I mean, afterwards I can tell you that I noticed that it dissolved.
Yeah.
Who is that? What is it inside of me which is making the experience?
Well, the clarity of our mind sees what is there, but it also gives rise to an articulation. I can see that my meditation is getting better. That thought, I can see that my meditation is getting better, could be light or heavy. It could be light as just a gesture of communication, and then it dissolves, and then it's no predictor that it's not going to be terrible tomorrow. It's just, this was good. or you can turn it into something quite solid. And now I am saying something about myself. But in the moment I say, I had a good practice today, as that vanishes, it's not just the semantic content, my observation on the quality of my practice today that's vanishing, but the self constellation which is implicated with it. So I dissolve as well as what I'm talking about, and then there's a space, and I can arise in another form, because I is empty. I is like a sort of cusp formula. The cusp is the point where things meet. It's on the cusp is where, somebody know that word in German? It means like the point of turning, of something going from one side to another. Almost like if you get to the top of a hill, you're then going down the other side. So,
in the sense of catharsis? In the sense of catharsis?
No. No, it's just like a turning point kind of thing. So, or if you think of Janus, this two-headed.
Yes.
So one head of I faces towards samsara and the other faces towards nirvana. I as openness, just this, stays open. We can keep saying I, but it fills and empties. That's the kind of liberation side. On the other side, it becomes like an endless lasagna, layer after layer of associations and accumulations. So, and you can see this happening in psychotherapy, that some patients, as they tell their story, the quality of it gets denser and denser and denser. It's almost like they're compacting their story, and they get less freedom the more they tell it. In other people, they tell it, and it's like unraveling a ball of string, and then suddenly they feel free from it, and they just leave and get on with their lives. So, the I operates in that way. If you couldn't make a statement about yourself, you would end up on a ward. You would be out of communication, and there would be no compassion. But when we say, I'll put it this way, because we are living in this flow of experience through time, everything is a gesture in time. And therefore, its precise validity is only that which pertains in the moment that it's enunciated. As we looked earlier, if I say I'm thirsty, that's only going to be the case until I have a drink. Yeah. Now, if somebody says, I love you, we want that to be slightly more enduring. So there are certain kinds of connectivity that we want to build on, that we see them as the basis of, thank God, now I've found somebody to be with, and da-da-da, and you can construct all sorts of things. From the point of view of Dzogchen, it's not that you have to disrupt everything all the time, but you have to see, this is a situational, contingent weaving together of something which will be there for a while, because I will die, or they will die, or something else will happen. And inside that, in order to maintain our connection, we're both going to have to be quite attuned and careful. So this is a training in awareness, not some final refuge. So that every connection is an invitation to be more precise, more attuned, and to find ways of relating, rather than to think you've arrived someplace. Because that's always the problem with the ego formulation, is wanting to know what is what.
And isn't it the case that we have this organizing awareness in us, and this also has a function, because when you are in the state, for example, of a stroke, you have had this stroke, and then there is no organization and function anymore. And, yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Then there is no awareness. I mean, I
Well, from the Dzogchen point of view, awareness is there, but it's the ego capacity to organize. The ego is the organizer. There is a pattern which is there, but it's not a pattern most egos want to have. You know, if you're in a car crash and you end up in a wheelchair, you can be very aware that you're in a wheelchair, but you might not want to be in a wheelchair. So from the ego point of view, this is terrible. From the awareness point of view, it's just aware that now I'm in a wheelchair. So awareness, the feeling tone of awareness is always neutral. It's not, as it says in this text by Rigson Godem, the mind is not created by good situations, nor is it destroyed by bad situations. But the ego can be. Some people kill themselves when they get bad news from the doctor. They say, I don't want to live like this, I'm going to die. I can't bear it. I can't bear it. Means that I am like this cup. I have a limited capacity. And when this news comes into me, I'm overwhelmed. I feel flooded. I can't bear it. At that point, I want out. Now, I don't doubt that what is happening for the person is horrible and challenging, but the fact is some people get the same information and they don't feel overwhelmed. This has to do with the size of their cup, with the flexibility of the ego identification, because if we can allow ourselves to become how we become, that is our luck. I am what I am. And if we feel over-fixated on a form, then being in the world may be impossible. For example, the famous story of Greta Garbo, who, as she got older, couldn't bear to go out in the street and have people make comments, the fact that she looked older. I mean, imagine being lucky enough to live a long life, but ashamed of the fact that you're getting old, so you have a terrible long life living in a little room. Because she was so famous for being this wonderful, beautiful person. And she became so identified with that image that, in a sense, she'd got to the top of the mountain early, and then the only way was down. But in fact, of course, she's not on the top of a mountain. It's a very flat field. And she was moving into difference. She was just getting old. Some wrinkles were coming on her face. She made it vertical. She said, that was gorgeous, this is terrible, I don't want anyone to see me. That was her evaluation of the situation. Not everybody feels that way about aging. So, in relation to the meditation practice, we're endlessly trying to open the cup, open the pot of ourselves. And the fundamental way of that is recognizing that the mind itself is like the Dharma Dhatu, all-encompassing space. It means everything which arises is our experience. It's already here. We just look around this room. We see all these people, the paintings, the decorations. Everything comes to us. It's here. Our mind is big. But we can feel quite small. Most of us experience in childhood moments of being shamed. And when we feel shame, we become very small. And the structure of shaming is usually someone finding a way to define us. You're like this. You don't know anything. Ha ha ha, your dad's not your real dad. Some horrible thing. You become a thing which is defined. That is what kills us off. Because in that moment, you go from the felt, expansive, luminous quality of being a subject interacting in the world. That is to say, your awareness is vitally part of what is going on, to being caught in someone's definition of you and shrunk. And you get paralyzed. And it's very, very painful. It's horrible. You get turned into an object. And objectification is poisonous. We see it all over the world in terms of racism, misogynistic attitudes and so on. It literally can kill people off. Having a sense that how they are is bad, but especially when that sense of badness is internalized. So the fragility of the ego, its problem is this: I want to exist as something good, but I don't really understand how the world works. I have to learn through experience. I make mistakes. Some person can catch me in my mistake or in my naivety or my vulnerability and stick the finger in. And it's as if they've caught me. They've really defined me. This is the ego's vulnerability. It's very difficult to get beyond that, because this is the quality of the ego. The ego is not strong or robust, but awareness is indestructible. So again and again we do the practice, and when we get caught in the thoughts and the construction of the ego self, we're giving up the domain of freedom for the hope that we're going to find gold in a land of coal. And that's, from the Dharma point of view, it's not a very wise decision that you would choose limitation over infinity. Because the infinite doesn't get destroyed and the limited always gets destroyed. So every time when we're sitting in the meditation and we get entranced by thoughts, these are not the first thoughts we've ever had. You have a lot of experience. You have at least 20, 30 years of being with thoughts. Millions and millions of thoughts. And if any of these thoughts had been the absolute truth, the reliable truth, you could just hang on to it. You could tattoo it on your forehead, print it on your t-shirt, and you'd be sorted. But it isn't like that. Every thought you ever had has kissed you, loved you, and left you. Thoughts are the Don Giovanni of the world. They're very seductive.
Relating to meditation, we need something, I think we need something which recognize I'm caught up in thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And this something is the ego and the attention.
Mm-hmm.
Is it correct to say it like this? And I have sometimes the feeling, yes, I recognize there's quite a lot going on and I'm not in the open, I'm small, I recognize it. And now is the point, if I decide then to make stop with this overinvestment, then my ego says, oh, no, this overinvestment is not good, I make stop. But who is doing the stop? Or what you are doing?
Yeah, but from the point of view of Dzogchen, you don't need to stop it. If you stay on the point of the overinvestment, say you find you're really caught up in thinking about some problem, you're really in it. As soon as you become aware of that, you don't want to jump out of that. You're simply teasing yourself into a slight, very slight tilt away from it. You know, this traditional example sometimes we've used before, that Tibetans, when they make butter, they churn it in a little wooden churner, churning the cream around. And in that process, sometimes a hair goes into it. So by the time they're scraping out the ball of butter, the hair is kind of woven inside the butter. So you have to catch the end of the hair and pull it very gently so that it doesn't break. But you have to keep your fingers clean, because if they get butter on them, they just keep sliding off the hair. So it's a, you know, you're just feeling your way into it. So it's that sort of intuition. So you're in this thought, not too far away, not merged into it. You're just with it. In Tibetan they say toktu, which means on. like nowadays in English people say, I'm on it, means I'm with it, I'm in it. So it's that kind of on it. So I'm not merged in it, I'm not believing in it anymore. I was caught up in it, I was in it, and now I see, but I see close to it. And this is the difficult thing. This is why we use this image of the mirror again and again, because the reflection is in the mirror. So the thought is in the mind. If you then, as it were, split your mind or go into a dualistic thing, I'm thinking about this thought, I don't like this thought, I want to get rid of this thought. It's just thought chasing thought chasing thought. So the clarity of the constellation of the thought is the clarity of the mirror, which is not separate from the thought. So usually we're trying to get far away from the things that bug us. But here we're allowing the thought to be itself inside our mind. It's not harmful. It's not harmful. That's the essential thing. And we can only discover the truth of this for ourselves by doing the meditation practice. Thought arises, it's there. There is a judgment, I like it, I don't like it. These are also thoughts, but just stay on the thought and it goes. Since you were born, millions of thoughts. Since you got up this morning, thousands and thousands of thoughts. Thoughts always go. You don't need to get rid of them. If you run a bar and someone is late at night and someone in your bar is very drunk and they're staggering to get out the door, you don't tell them to leave. If you tell them to leave, they're likely to turn around and get into a big thing with you. If they're leaving, let them leave. Would you agree? So, your thoughts are always leaving. Leave them alone. They're very sticky. They're very drunk. If you get involved with that thought, it's going to vomit over you. Okay, let's do a little more sitting before we take a break. So again, we do it with the 3R. Okay. So we take a break now and have food soon, and at 8 o'clock we can meet together and start to look at this text by Pater Rinpoche, which describes the nature of the mind and then relates that to how to deal with all the many different kinds of meditation problems that can arise. So it's a very, very helpful text. And I think if we have time to do the practice together and then to reflect on his explanations, it'll give us some good resources to be able to continue the practice when we apart and have to work on our own. Okay, so we meet back at 8 o'clock. Okay, so we'll start to look at this text by Pato Rinpoche. Pato Rinpoche is a very famous Lama who was living about 100 years ago. He is famous for being able to communicate Dharma in a simple, clear way that would help people to understand. Quite a lot of the traditional structures of Dharma are like the outer battlements, the outer walls of a castle. They're designed to select the elect, and the ordinary people won't get it. And so you have a kind of pyramidical structure in Dharma. So everybody can understand, be good, don't do bad things. That's the bottom level. And so it goes up and up and up to the top level. And very often, ordinary people were only told, be good and don't be bad, with a small encouragement to develop a bodhisattva attitude. So the number of people who were actually practicing Dzogchen and views like that was very small in many places. And if people wanted access to it, often they had to leave monastic settings and become yogis and yoginis living in caves and so on. So there were two cultures, a hierarchical culture centered around the monasteries, where of course there are many thrones with different levels of cushions indicating status. And status was very, very important because status determined the quality of butter that went into your tea, whether your bowl had gold edging or silver edging or was plain and so on. And these signifiers were very, very important because they gave a hint to ordinary people when they came to give offerings how much different people should get according to their status. So you have a choreography of power, status, and money operating in monasteries. And this influences access to teachings as well. But Pato Rinpoche traveled around, walking, often on his own, going into villages and nomad camps, and talking to people in their own simple language. So this was it's remarked on by Tibetans as being quite an unusual thing to happen. And his starting point, of course, is that the Buddha nature is everybody's nature, and that the hierarchies of the world, the social hierarchies, are not important for meditators to think about. They're important for people embedded in these hierarchies because that's what they live in. But our actual nature is not determined by our race or our gender or our age. Our basic nature is there, it's complete, and our task is to awaken to it. So in this text, he sets out the basic principles, first of all, and then he looks at the kind of difficulties that can get in the way. The text is called Self-Liberating Understanding, which means that whatever understanding you develop, it liberates itself. It doesn't concretize into a dogmatic assertion. So from that point of view, you can gain everything but have nothing to say. Because as soon as you make a concretized formulation, you can start to deceive yourself. Now, of course, in order to get any teaching at all, we have to make use of language. We have to find ways of connecting and communicating. But we always have to take this, as I was indicating earlier, in a gestural way, as something which is like a movement that allows another movement to occur. It's not to establish some kind of cognitive truth, some conceptual truth that we're all to be imprisoned by. So the text begins, a teaching from the heart of a ragged gentleman. So he was a little bit ragged. That is to say, he didn't like to have a lot of gold braid, and he didn't like to be established where he had to be respectable. Respectability is quite a prison. You can gain a lot from being respectable, because hierarchical systems, patriarchal systems will say, you're one of us, you fit in. And rewards come from that, but there's a huge amount of the loss of freedom. So he is an outsider. He is somebody who chooses freedom to engage over the benefits of belonging. And that's quite a good encouragement for all of us. So he begins, wonderful. Never moving from the state of the perfect natural mode, having cut the root of delusion, you are the primordial Buddha. Samantabhadra, may I quickly actualize your understanding just as it is. So here, this is a small praise verse which you get at the beginning of all traditional Tibetan texts. So he's honoring Samantabhadra, the founding Buddha of the Dzogchen lineage. Samantabhadra is dark blue in color. That is to say, he has the depth of the night sky, the ungraspable expanse of the night sky, and yet there is a flavor of dawn in that blue as well, the possibility of light spreading out. So there are these two aspects of our experience, depth and light. Depth is the dhatu, the dharma dhatu, the expanse of the mind in which we don't find anything. And light, the natural light, the swayam prakash, is the light which is the effulgence of that dark night. So Samantabhadra is the mind which is not busy, the mind which is not hyperactive, but the natural, contented inclusivity of spacious awareness. And it's the perfect natural mode. Natural mode is the translation I use here for Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya means the body of the Dharma. It means the mind of the Buddha. The word Dharma has many, many different meanings, but one of them is, if you like, truth or how it is. So the Dharmakaya is the experience of how it is. Kaya means body, but it's a particular, it means more like an aspect, the aspect of incontrovertible truth, just unartificiality as it isness. And so he says, the mind of Samantabhadra never changes from this state. It's always inseparable from the Dharmakaya. Having cut the root of delusion, you are the primordial Buddha. Means that there is no delusion in the primordial Buddha. That no tendrils of confusion or elaboration can wrap themselves around him. The root of delusion is not attending to how things are. Because if you don't know how things are, you will fill the space with imagining. This is pretty obvious. My youngest son doesn't like reading anyway, and when he reads, he prefers to imagine what is on the page. Especially when he comes to difficult words and I say, stop, spell it out. No, silence. Then he just says, it is, and invents something out of nowhere. This is exactly ignorance. If you don't see what is there, the creativity of the mind doesn't stop. It just starts to illuminate and elaborate some fantasy. You fill the space with deluded thoughts. That's all that samsara is. It's the creativity of the mind cut loose from the actuality of the ground. If you observe how things are, emptiness locates all that manifests as dynamic, because it's the unfolding of emptiness. But if you disregard emptiness, you start imagining things as truly existing. This is the deluded fantasy, and this is what he has cut. So then we say, may we quickly awaken to his understanding, to your understanding just as it is, because it's the best thing to awaken to. So now Patrul Rinpoche begins. If you fortunate people wish to gain enlightenment, then diligently practice the true meaning of these 3 words from the heart of this wandering beggar, the old dog Patrul. 3 words here means it's a concise expression. It doesn't mean there's exactly 3 words, but it means this is what in the tradition is called a menak, a concise teaching from the heart. Then he says, that which is known as emptiness natural mode, that is to say, Shunya Dharmakaya, is the fulfillment of the vows of all guru adepts. That is to say, all those who have been practicing, all those who have awakened and been able to function as teachers, their understanding is exactly that of emptiness, which is the Dharmakaya. There's nothing else. Then he says, it is the understanding of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. It is the life essence of all the deities. It is the heart blood of all the Dakinis and the sight of all the Dharma protectors. It is the essential nectar of all the sutras and tantras, the pure essence of all the secret mantra vidyadharas. Means it's the core or deep understanding of the great yogis, the vidyadharas, who have awakened to the nature of vidya, of rigpa, awareness. It is the one teaching of Mahamudra, of Dzogchen, and of Madhyamika, of the great perfection and the middle way. So what he's saying here is, there are many, many different Dharma paths. All of these Dharma paths lead to the goal, but this teaching that he is giving goes directly to the goal. And therefore it's not necessary to follow all these different paths, because they will bring you to the same place, but he will go directly there. Because when you start to come into Buddhism, there are so many things to learn. There are so many possible ways to go, and people are always saying, oh, this is the highest teaching, this is the secret teaching. If you get this initiation, then this door will open and that door to hell will close, and so on. These are activities of the imagination. We can imagine everything. We can imagine anything. We can imagine Donald Duck. Not a bad idea. It won't cause any wars. And people, the guys who invented Donald Duck, were able to imagine many, many films worth of Donald Duck, many, many books about Donald Duck. That is to say, one day somebody's sitting at their drawing board and they come up with this thing and they adjust it a little bit. Wow, what's that? We'll call it Donald Duck. And on the basis of that, so many pages of cartoons have been developed. Yeah.
You read all of them.
He is not my Yidam. He is not my So what that means is there is no end to creativity. There's nothing wrong with creativity as long as you know what we create is illusion. There's nothing wrong with illusion. Illusion doesn't mean lying or cheating. It doesn't mean something false. When you, as in the traditional example, if you go out on full moon night in the quiet countryside and you see a lake, there suddenly in the lake is the reflection of the moon. because the surface is calm and the moon is bright and clear and there are no clouds in the sky, the patterning on the moon is there, available in the water. You see the moon in the water, but the moon is not in the water. The moon is not trying to cheat you through making this false reflection. It's not a lie or a deception, it's an illusion. It is an appearance which has no substance behind it. So this is the real meaning of illusion in Buddhism. It's not some hallucination. It's not a delusion. Delusion comes from believing that an illusion is true, is real, is substantial, is really existing. That's the delusion. When you recognize illusion as illusion, that's a freedom. So, he's saying that what he's going to describe in very simple terms is the truth of how it is. That is, if you get this, it's enough. So he says, this is to introduce you to the inseparability of your own mind and the Dharmakaya and the natural mode. Knowing this, everything is liberated. So we are here, we have a mind, we imagine, we certainly have lots of thoughts and sensations, and we want to get some degree of awakening or enlightenment. When we find ourselves being caught up in our preoccupations and worries and anxieties, it's easy to imagine that the Buddha has another kind of mind. They don't have what I have, because what I have is a bit of a mess. But what he's saying is, your mind is not different from the Dharmakaya, from the mind of the Buddha. This is an invitation to recognize this one simple thing we've looked at today. The content of the mind and the mind is not the same. If you have a glass, you can put orange juice in it, or red wine, or petrol. You can put any kind of liquid in that glass. The glass is not determined by the content. However, if you say in a bar, I'd like a glass of wine, they bring you a glass with wine in it. We have a glass of wine. It seems like a kind of copula. It's a joint thing, isn't it? The wine and the glass go together. But that glass could also be used for milk or water. But in a bar, they have fancy glasses for different kinds of wine and different kinds of beer and so on, because that differentiation seems to say, well, if you're having this special Belgian beer, then you need a funny-shaped glass, because people in Belgium are funny. Actually, that beer could go in any shape of glass. It's simply a convention to have it in that glass. So, our mind itself is not conditioned by the content. But our subjectivity is a content of our mind. So this is a very important point to become clear about, because if you're not clear about it, you get very confused. Mind as awareness is just showing. What does it show? It shows us in this room. Each of us sees the room and has an experience of ourselves seeing the room. Can you see the ceiling? Everyone is able to see the ceiling. This is very good. Are you awake to the fact that you are seeing the ceiling? Yeah. So you experience the ceiling, and you experience yourself experiencing the ceiling. The status of the ceiling and the status of yourself are the same as being experiences. My body is something I experience, the walls are something I experience, the carpet is something I experience. If I don't go into the particularities of what I can say about the object, what each of these things is something that is happening for me. The fact that I'm talking now is something happening for me. My hands are going round in some gesture. This is happening for me. So the movement of my hands is an experience, how I'm sitting is an experience, the floor is an experience, other people's faces are an experience. Oh, each of these is appearance and emptiness. Appearance and emptiness are inseparable. My body appears to me. I hear the sound of my voice talking. I am appearing within the mirror of my mind. So I'm both the awareness that is aware of the unfolding of the experience, and there is also a particular identification. I am the one who is talking. The subjectivity is an experience in and for and as the mind. So it's not just an experience for the mind, like I look at the ceiling. The ceiling is something that arises for me because I can get up and go out of the room. Unless I choose to kill myself, I can't really go out of my ego self. So I go out of the room, I'm still me in my subjectivity. So my subjectivity feels to be a continuing feature of my experience. And yet, as we've looked before, its content moment by moment is changing. So that's what I meant when I said that this I is on this rocking point, or this cusp between the openness of awareness and the precise formulation of subjectivity moment by moment. So to recognize the ground nature of the mind, or the openness of the mind, which is the site of the hospitality of all the subjective movements of myself, I have to relax. Because it's that relaxed openness that allows subjectivity to show itself as movement and change. If I lock myself into my sense of self, I'm sitting here, I'm talking, you guys are probably tired, I don't know if I'm making any sense, there's a lot of words come out my mouth today, what the fuck is going on, maybe we should just go to sleep or go and get drunk, I don't know. So, all sorts of things can be said. Who's saying them? I'm saying them. What is this subjectivity? I could wrap myself in these thoughts and become very small. And when we become small, like shame or guilt or uncertainty, we lose our own ground. It would be like an actor is on the stage and something happens and they get stage fright. For example, someone I saw years ago when he was young did a lot of acting. And he enjoyed acting, was the main thing in his life. He couldn't imagine anything better than being on the stage. And one day when he was acting, it was in quite a small theatre, someone came in halfway through the performance. And they came through the swing door at the back of the theatre, and the door moved at an angle. It was a door, as you typically get in a theatre, it had a glass top to it. So the door opened, and at the angle it was at, he was able to see his own reflection in the mirror, in the mirror surface of the glass. He lost it. He suddenly became self-conscious. I'm on the stage and I'm acting. And he couldn't get back in. And he stumbled off the stage and people said, oh, don't worry, the scene's going to end quickly and you can go on again. He never went back on the stage again. He has never acted since. That was after 30 years. It's amazing, isn't it? So you get bumped out of yourself. That's like a shame reaction. Suddenly he became an object and he couldn't come back to being a subject. And it's only as a subject that we can awaken to our awareness. So when we find ourselves imprisoned in lots of definitions about ourselves, ideas about ourselves, messages that we've had from our parents and school teachers and so on about ourselves. When this kind of cladding is all around us, it's like the armor of some medieval knight. It clanks around in our world, and our freedom and flexibility is lost. So, when he's saying, this is your own mind, he's meaning, don't tell yourself what your mind is, because that will be to participate in the unfolding of the narratives which are the creativity of your mind. If you want to see your mind, be with it. We don't see our mind as an object. So, in the Tibetan language, they use this visual metaphor a great deal. They have many, many, many words for seeing. Because seeing is, of course, the freshness of the world. You go out and maybe you see the snow for the first thing in the morning. Wow! It's an immediate, direct impact. So that's really what it symbolizes or gestures towards. But actually, we don't see our mind as a thing. We become our mind as spaciousness. So to awaken to your mind is to become the openness of the mind, which you already are. So when you sit in the practice and you suddenly feel, oh, everything's happening at once. This whole experience is unfolding. That is to say, through the practice, because it's Dzogchen practice, you don't have a vajra and a bell. That's what you need for Tantra. What you get is a screwdriver. And with the screwdriver, you undo the screws that are holding you in place. And gradually you start flopping about. And then you start to see, oh, everything is moving. Because at first we do this, and we're just sitting. So what is this all about? We start thinking about it, and that makes it solid. But the more you give yourself to it, you're in the flow. And somebody moves, and somebody coughs, and there's a noise from outside, and the bells. This is time. You find that you yourself are time. You're not thinking about time. You've not placed yourself outside of time, and you're going to the past, going to the future. From an abstracted, alienated place, time is you, and space is you, and you're suddenly in that moment right at the center of the unfolding of the universe. And this is the mind of the Dharmakaya, the mind of all the Buddhas. So that's what he's helpfully telling us. Knowing this, everything is liberated. This is the key point. There is nothing sticky in space. On the earth, there's all kinds of plants that have saps and juices and so on. The world is sticky because it's interesting and fascinating and it pulls you in. But space itself is just free. So when we see space, everything goes free because there's nothing for these sticky things to stick onto. The stickiness of the world requires the stickiness of the ego. And our subjectivity, when it loses its awareness of its own ground of emptiness, becomes like half a Velcro pad. Velcro is this thing you can put your shoes on and off with. What do you call it in German? Yeah, okay. Very good. So, one half of this sticky surface is the world, and the other half is yourself. And you find that you lock on. And the thing about Velcro is it works according to the angle that you place it at. So if you try to pull it apart directly, it has a lot of resistance, but if you unpeel it, it comes off. So, by seeing the spaciousness of the mind, all the little hooks which are embedded in your subjectivity dissolve, because these hooks were there as a do-it-yourself method of trying to create stability. When small children get a bit lost, maybe in a shopping place, and they lose their mum or their dad, they get very upset, because when the big person is there, they can just feel themselves and feel very independent. But when the big person is not there to reassure them, they become very, very small and desperate. They're looking for something to hold on to. So this is exactly what happens when the ego's function, and it is a function, separates from the ground on the basis of imagining it's a thing, it's a self-existing phenomena. Although it appears to be self-existing, it's immediately a little bit lonely and a little bit anxious, and I'd like to have a friend. Will you be my friend? But now you go, will you be my friend? I need a lot of friends. Is everybody my friend? So that's what the ego is doing, and that's why it develops these little hooks, because it's trying to find a network of reflection that will stabilize that I'm okay, that you don't hate me, you're not going to kill me, you're not going to rob me or cheat me, and I'll be able to get through my life without too much grief. So it's constantly negotiating little alliances in the world. This is what keeps binding us into more and more activity. So this attachment movement, as it says in all the Buddhist texts, arises from ignorance. If we are ignoring the natural, the given spaciousness of our being, the indestructible Vajra empty nature of our being, that ignoring condemns us to imagining all sorts of identities and necessities in order to keep ourselves moving as we are. So this is why in the meditation the main thing we're doing is relaxing and trusting. Because if you relax and trust, you find that not only are you falling through space, but you are space. So you're not some heavy lead weight that's going to plummet down to the bottom and crash, but you suddenly find that you're free. Because the mind is space, the space of the natural space of the mind. So that's what it means, that if you see this, everything goes free, because what has kept both the object not free and the subject not free has been the activity of trying to create stability within movement. So the mind, which is empty, never changes. The content of the mind, the movement of the mind, which is all the experience, everything which appears to be external and internal, is always moving. Always moving. You cannot stabilize it. So when the ego wants to find security and safety, it's on an impossible mission. It can't be done. Everywhere in England there are security cameras. They've got them on just about every street corner. You go in the airport, they've got them everywhere. These cameras don't keep you safe. They can be used in court, in evidence, to try to identify the person who murdered you, but they wouldn't stop you being murdered. You'd be being murdered on camera. That's the problem, isn't it? That the perception that comes from the ego is always after the fact of the action.
So if you're hanging out in stillness and nothingness and space, and there's fear gripping your heart, or there's something that doesn't want to die, it's like the death of the ego. It's scary. Just the practice is just to let that eventually dissolve and see that
Exactly.
it's just space.
Exactly. So the best story in the Western tradition for this is from Hans Christian Andersen, The Ugly Duckling. So here is this creature that finds itself awakening into life out of an egg among the ducks. And it doesn't look like a duck. So all the other little ducks start pecking it, and so it tries to run away and makes friends with the hen. But the hen starts pecking it as well. And so in the story is quite elaborated. This poor little creature has many, many experiences until it's in a state of total despair. So it finds a big lake and it decides, I'm going to swim out into the middle of the lake and drown. I want to die. Swimming out. Here's this, oh my God, these big guys are going to kill me. And 3 big swans fly down onto the lake. They swim up to it. Oh my God. Say, hello, beautiful little swan. Have you been here long? Me? A swan? Moi? So, the swan is born, the ugly duckling has died, but there was never an ugly duckling. So when you say the ego is going to die, there was never that kind of ego. That was an illusion. The ego as an enduring structure which has a life of its own, that is a misapprehension. So the ego is pretending it's a duck, but it's a swan.
But the fear seems to be real, doesn't it? The fear of the dissolution.
Yeah?
What to do?
Well, partly that's why we talk again and again about the view, because we are dissolving. So in the tantric practice, when you've done all the mantras and done the exchange of light in the 3 places, taking the 4 initiations and so on, the deity dissolves into your body and you dissolve into that. Dissolving is a major part of it. And so you have these 2 aspects in Tantra, Kierim and Zorim, the path or the level of construction in which you create mandala palaces and so on. And then the aspect of dissolution, in which you dissolve the visualization, but you also work on the channels in the body to dissolve the felt sense of the body being substantial. That's quite a good background practice to do. Generally in Dzogchen you don't do that, but just directly you're seeing moment by moment who you have taken yourself to be was there as an empty appearance. So precisely this simple example, I feel thirsty. I'm really thirsty. And you just stay with that. And then you start to drink some water. And as you drink the water, I am thirsty is dissolving in the water. Now I'm not thirsty. So how is that possible? That is to say, the ego is dissolving all the time in its phenomenological presence. In our conceptual identification of it, it is an enduring function. So the persistence of the ego formation is conceptual, not actual. When you observe the actuality of your existence, how it is, it's dissolving all the time. That's the key exit. But if you sit in the conceptual headquarters, it's very difficult.
I wasn't thinking it would be conceptual. I think the fear doesn't seem to be conceptual, does it? The sense of tension, the pain in your heart, or whatever it is that people are talking about.
When do you experience that?
I don't.
Well, on behalf of those sentient beings who do.
No, I know. There's several people who mentioned it.
No, well, I think that's
And
because
I think you obviously can.
it's because they have a false perception. that they're anxious, but they're not anxious about dissolving. Because how can you be anxious about dissolving except by not knowing that you are always dissolving? That is to say, they're anxious about the loss of an illusory sense of stability, which they have never ever had.
So the only thing to do is to practice the dissolving until that
Yeah.
pain
Or-
or anxiety just stops arising.
Or go to your local school and say you want to enroll in primary school. You're tired of being an adult. And they'll say, well, you seem to be a nice person, but we don't really have people of your age in class 1. You used to be in class 1 once upon a time, a long time ago, but that little girl is kaput. So she was there and is dissolved. You have been 1,000 million women, and they have all dissolved. So if you attend to your life as it is, dissolving is normal. But if you live in a concretized, conceptualized notion, this is who I am, this is an advertising statement. This is a construct. And of course, because it's insisting on its truth, the fear of losing that, if you think that's all you've got, then you feel anxious. And that's why I think the story of the ugly duckling is very helpful. The anxiety comes from the loss of the false construct. Because what you will gain is much more than what you will lose. And the key thing is, what you will lose is something you never had. That's why it's ridiculous. Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask one last thing?
Sure.
So you have fear in the body. Most people can
Yeah.
have a tight heart or butterflies, and you're sitting there, and that's a real experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can be gripped by fear for decades.
Yeah.
And sitting with nothing, letting go, and there being a sense of fear that's like, it seems to be like the last sticky bit that's sticking around sometimes, that's holding on. But just, I guess, once again, the practice just to sit with it, be with it.
Well, you see, yeah, because, I mean, what would be more embarrassing in the middle of a busy street where there are lots of cars going by and people tooting their horn, if you were to fart loudly then, or if you were to fart in a quiet library?
Noisy streets, but better.
So, normally in your life you're not aware of your anxiety. But you sit in the meditation practice, everything calms down. You're allowing yourself to be more sensitive, less defended. So habitual anxiety, which has been generated through interactive moments on the basis of being a person, insults, humiliations of various kinds, ambition, envy, so many causes feed into that kind of anxiety. This anxiety starts to manifest. Now, because you haven't been conscious of it in your busy preoccupations in daily life, you can make a false conclusion. Oh, this anxiety is generated through meditation. Now I'm relaxing and opening. Relaxing and opening makes me feel anxious. This is not true. Relaxing and opening allows you to see the level of anxiety you've been carrying all your life, which has been a mobilizing function, because usually anxiety means something must be done. Oh my God, what's happening? The adrenaline rises, the cortisol, and we're up and ready for action. So if you've had a lot of that sort of disturbance in your life, safety equals mobilization towards the challenge. So the counterintuitive thing is, if you relax, you'll find that it's basically okay. I don't think so. I have to protect myself. I need to defend myself. I remember I got bullied at school. I remember that teacher was horrible to me. We all have these conditioned memories and patterns of arousal to do something. That's the thing that's more difficult. it's not the fear, I think, of dissolving, but the fear, if I don't protect myself by mobilization, I will be more vulnerable. But of course, the more you relax and you realize that the root of your mind is awareness, inseparable from space, you find that it's invulnerable. It's not hurt. Because we just see it's just experience. It's just experience. And the experiences arise and pass, arise and pass. And they have their flavor, but they don't leave any trace. When the ugly thing is placed in front of the mirror and then removed, and you put a beautiful thing in front of the mirror, there isn't a smear of ugliness kind of covering over the new beauty. The ugly is gone. Now the beautiful's come. So in the course of the day, we have had hundreds of thousands of experiences, but some of them got sticky. Some of them got to us. Why did that person look at me? Why doesn't that person look at me? Some little kind of, and we cogitate on it. We run it around in our mind, and this kind of massages it in. It kind of cuts a little groove for it, and some trace is made. What I would suggest is the trace is not made by the event. Very, very rarely. The trace is made by how we process the event, by the elaboration that we have. And you see that a lot with PTSD. I mean, in post-traumatic stress disorder, it's a big discussion because some people will say clearly certain traumas do carry an impact somatically prior to any conceptualization about it. But for most lower level traumas, it's the conceptual elaboration that does the damage. So the anxiety is often the product of our continuing thinking about something. Why did it happen? Why did it happen to me? Why does it always happen to me? It shouldn't have happened, and so on. And these thoughts inflate the significance of the event and seem to give it a duration across time. It's actually gone. All these events are actually vanishing. So you could say that the anxiety arises because you are being dishonest in time. You're pretending that the past is the present. The past is already gone. If you're still alive, you've survived it. It's amazing how many people have gone through horrible things, have a reasonable life, manage to travel across the town, to come to therapy and sit down and become a victim and talk about all the things that happened to them. And I say, yeah, but you got on a bus. Do you clean your teeth? Do you wipe your arse? Oh, you're not doing too badly. So on the basis of what you're doing, you're not a helpless victim. So you have a victim story and you're giving it to a survivor. What would you prefer to be? What would you prefer to be? Oh, I see. If you're a survivor and you go on with your life, you don't have any special status. And so you can't come to the clinic and see someone like me. Better to be a victim. Pathetic victim. Hopeless victim. That's the issue, isn't it? That when it talks about karmic traces, these are things that we identify with. So as our karma manifests in the wide variety of circumstances in our lives, we merge with our karma. That is to say, karma is both the subjective and the objective movement of propensities, of tendencies. These can lock on or not. So you can feel a tendency in yourself, but you needn't indulge it. I remember my mum telling me that when she was young, she tried a cigarette and she thought, these are really nice. But if I smoke another one, I'll end up smoking lots of cigarettes, and you have to smoke them all the time because everybody's looking in their handbag to find the cigarette. I don't think I'll bother having another one. I thought that was smart mum. Because as you can see where it leads, the wheel starts turning and it becomes part and parcel of your identity. But when you have that taste, you think, oh, I don't need to have another taste. This is what it is. Now I know what a cigarette tastes like. No need for another. Then it's just an event. But you repeat the event. Of course, each event is new. You line up a series of events and you start to create from that an identity. I'm a smoker. And so in that, I think that's very much how the anxiety operates. I don't think it's the anxiety of dissolution, because the one who is attending to the actuality of their existence won't have that fear. The one who is thinking about their life from an ungrounded, unembodied place may well feel anxiety because they're building their life out of dreams. They don't have the groundedness of immediate experience. And I think in these situations, if possible, if we can take someone for a walk in the park and let them look at the autumn trees and have that moment of immediate aesthetic responsivity. Oh, they look at these reds and yellows and suddenly, whew, the breath changes. Oh, it's okay. So in that state, relaxing and opening and letting the world move through you is okay. So your undefended self, your welcoming self, is now a beautiful experience. My sense is we need to do more of that kind of thing. That's why in the practice, being in nature whenever we have the chance is so important. Okay, almost our time. I just look at this last little piece from him for today. This one is sufficient to rule. Sounds like something from Lord of the Rings. By rule, it means it's referring back to a famous Dzogchen text, the Kunche Jalpo, the king who does everything. The king who does everything is Rigpa itself. That text was one of the earliest Dzogchen texts, and it's studied a lot. So, awareness inseparable from emptiness rules everything. That is to say, it rules it not by tight control, but it rules it by knowing very precisely what everything is. That is to say, everything is experience and emptiness. So Tibetan language is lovely for this, so they say rik tong, nang tong, sal tong. Tong means empty, so you can stick it on very nicely to all the possible formulations in the world. Everything is empty. And when you see the emptiness of everything, you've got its number. Whatever things present themselves as being, or are introduced to you by other people as being, they are the radiance of emptiness. They are illusory forms. We are all illusory forms, held together due to causes and circumstances, but without any internal defining essence. And when you know that, then you know everything is like that. That's what it is. This whole world is the ceaseless display of emptiness. So that is to be the ruler of all. It's the ultimate nature of Mahamudra. Mahamudra means, essentially it means something like ringing true. Mahamudra means like the great seal or the great symbol or the great gesture. And it just means, oh yeah, perfect. Like you go to an art gallery and you look at a whole range of paintings and suddenly you stop. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Oh. That ringing true is what is Mahamudra. So when you recognize your own nature, it just is. If you see it in the morning, you'll be a Buddha in the morning. If you see it in the evening, you'll be a Buddha in the evening. So it is said. This great name has a great meaning. All these titles and attributes refer simply to remaining in the self-arising non-artificiality of the emptiness of your own mind. This is the key thing for meditators. In Buddhism, there are endless fancy titles and status things, and inner and outer and upper and lower. All of these things simply refer to being at home in your own mind. If you recognize the self-arising non-artificiality of the emptiness of your own mind. Self-arising here means it's not created by causes and conditions. It's not created by something other than itself, nor even is it created by itself. It just emerges. It's an emergent phenomenon. Awareness, it's emergent and pervasive, and it just is. And this is the heart of all the Buddha's teachings. None of the Buddha's teachings lead anywhere other than this, but some take you on a very long bus journey, and some go very quickly, and this will take us very quickly. So, that is that for today.